said that momentum begets momentum, and that the best way to start is to start. So I will. 18 months ago, my head was full of worries about starting secondary school, finding friends, and whether or not there was going to be ice cream for pudding. But now I find myself as part of a global movement of young people, campaigning against climate change, driven by a passion to play my part. And while my individual achievements might not be so dramatic, when joined with the efforts of all those other young people, the momentum feels unstoppable. Just like a snowball, getting bigger and bigger and hopefully creating an avalanche of change. And I've been thinking about where the momentum behind my own transformation first came from. But to be honest, there was no single eureka moment. Because that's the thing about momentum. It can start so small that you barely even realize it's happening. If anything, what I've done started not out of a passion for the environment, but an interest in petitions. I saw one on Facebook about bees and wondered what it would be like to start my own, to watch the numbers grow and to see how many people I could get to join me. I guess my petition could have as easily been about a shorter school day or nicer cakes in the canteen. But in the end, I plumped for getting rid of single-use plastic bottles at my school, which seemed as good a subject as any at the time. And so I set it up. And it was actually a piece of cake, even if it wasn't about cake. And it was up and running before you could say David Attenborough. For a few weeks, I enjoyed watching as more and more people started to sign it. And at that point, a brilliant nature writer called Robert McFarlane shared my petition on Twitter, which really got things going. And it was no longer just my friends and my Auntie Monica signing it, though thanks very much, Auntie Monica, but people from all over the world, which encouraged me to join the newly formed eco-group at my school. And the more I learnt, the harder it was for me to understand how climate change had gone on for so long without more being done. Just at my school, we were using almost 300 plastic bottles every single day. That's nearly 60,000 a year. The more knowledge I gained, the more strongly I felt, the more questions I had. A charity called Action for Conservation saw my petition and suggested I apply to go on their week-long camp with some top environmentalists. I confess I'd never heard of them at the time. But there'd be beach cleans, bat walks, hikes, eco-crafts, which all sounded like great fun. Because it turns out that sometimes passions don't jump out and bite you. They creep up on you, just like a shadow when the sun started to come out. And whilst I was waiting to hear whether I had been accepted onto the camp, I made a presentation to the student parliament at my school about banning single-use plastic bottles. And our eco-group was then asked to make this presentation into a school assembly. And it was kind of terrifying. I didn't know how the other pupils would react, but mainly because stood watching alongside me other teachers with my headmaster. After the assembly, he asked me to come to his office. And it was kind of terrifying. I went along and I nervously told him how I'd set up the online petition about the school without asking, and how quite a lot of people had signed it. He grinned. I couldn't have been met with a more positive response. Not only did he listen, but he set up a meeting with the school catering company so that us students could talk to them. And that's taught me that it works when you stand up and say what you believe in, even if it's frightening. Because once you've spoken out, then people can come and support you. We met with the catering company. We asked them to stop using the plastic bottles, the plastic wrappers on the muffins and the fruit, and we expected them to be nervous about their profits. This would be a big business step for them. Which is why it was so incredible when they said they could support a pledge for the school to go single-use plastic-free by mid-2019. And not only that, but we could become the pilot project for some of the other hundreds of schools that the catering company supplies. And this was exciting stuff. I felt like I could finally change even just a small part of the system. And after that, the momentum started to roll faster and faster. I spoke at a big eco event in our town centre. I went on the conservation camp. I looked for the bats, cleaned all the beaches, well, some of them, listened to the top environmentalists. I even knew who some of them were by now. And the passion and enthusiasm from all the other kids on the camp was infectious. I was among like-minded young people. I listened to them, and they listened to me too. One of them even went back home and got her school to get rid of single-use plastic cups. And I went to my first major protest march, the phenomenal Walk for Wildlife down in London. I won a conservation grant from Kew Gardens. I'm a leader on the UK's first big biodiversity project run by young people. I went to London to support the Extinction Rebellion protests. And I recently met with Michael Gove to ask him to set up a youth advisory panel to which DEFRA would report each month. Nothing's happened yet, but I'm still hoping. And there were heaps of opportunities coming up. But one thing I've had to learn is that momentum can also get a little bit out of control. And like I said earlier, snowballs can create avalanches. Sometimes I come home from school to find an overflowing inbox. I'm beginning to sound like my parents. People ask me to join in things because they've heard that I'm interested in the environment. I get invited to do a campaigns webinar or an interview for someone's blog or even a TEDx talk. And that is all great, but I do like other things too, like dancing and swimming and chess. And in preparation for this talk, I went online to try and find some famous quotes about momentum. And the singer Annie Lennox said, "Things have a momentum, and at a certain point, you can't tell whether you have created the momentum or it is creating you." And this is a pretty good description of how I feel sometimes, filling in forms when I'd rather be playing Mario Kart against my sisters. And I won't lie, sometimes I put off trying to save the world in order to get my character Koopa Trooper onto the podium. It's not happened yet, I should say. I think I've also been lucky and unlucky. Unlucky that I've been born into a world facing the prospect of mass extinction, but lucky that it feels like a moment when something might finally change. And it's got to. Think about what I just said. We are facing the prospect of mass extinction. The end of life on this planet as we know it. Really think about that. There is some hope. If enough of us are inspired by the likes of Greta Thunberg and get involved. Her one-person school strike has now accounted and inspired tens of thousands of young people to campaign and protest every single Friday. Some of us from school wanted to get involved, so we took our placards and we protested outside our local town hall. There may have only been 5 of us the first time, but we tried again a month later and there were 5 times as many. And on the strike, I met my first real opposition. Everybody else had been so supportive so far, but there are naysayers out there. I look around at adults and see great things happening, but there is so much anger and name-calling. My generation are often dismissed as being immature, irresponsible, and a bit self-obsessed. Some people call us snowflakes. Well, on the strike, a very rude man denied climate change was real and called us silly, silly girls who'd been brainwashed. How would that make you feel? Well, actually, I am proud to be part of the snowflake generation. Because when snowflakes come together, they form snowballs. And once you start pushing, who knows what can happen? And so, recently, I've set up an inter-school eco-group where young people can come together to share their environmental ideas. And that's what I'm going to be working on in the near future. Let me leave you with this. There is never going to be the perfect person in the perfect place at the perfect time. If we keep waiting for that, nothing will ever change. But there is a perfect time to get that snowball started. And that is right now.